Well, hello, friends. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I'm here at a 205-year-old historic house in Waynesboro, Virginia, and it has been my pleasure, as well as pain, restoring the place that we are sitting in right now. And I'm actually on the Waynesboro Historic Commission now, and we're investigating more and more of the history of Waynesboro. And we are discovering and having some incredible things that we're being able to put together. I've met one of the ancestors of the original Bush family that actually sold the land for this building to be built, and they are literally buried at the cemetery right over there. Not the person that I've befriended, but the original Bush family that sold it and had the Bush farm, and they were a prominent family in Waynesboro, and we're discovering more and more. 5 days ago was the anniversary of the Battle of Waynesboro, one of the last engagements in the Shenandoah Valley and in the Civil War that took place here in 1865, March 2nd, on a sleety, rainy day. What's interesting is we're putting together a lot of the pieces. For example, behind over this way was a place called Rose Hall, which was kind of like an inn, a meeting place, and so on. The Confederate General Joseph Early was actually there having breakfast when they got attacked. So I came across this video, which is Civil War Ghost in Waynesboro, and I got intrigued because I don't know about the Civil War Ghost, but I do know that this allegedly was used as a hospital for the Battle of Waynesboro. And at the cemetery, there is a Confederate surgeon that's buried there, and there's some Confederate headstones that are there, and supposedly an unknown soldier that died in the battle buried there as well. So I do know about the cemetery. So I want to go and show you this tape and confirm or deny if there is paranormal activity. Let's go to the tape.
The Battle of Waynesboro was the final battle of the Valley Campaign during the American Civil War and led to the total destruction of the Confederate Army of the Shenandoah, led by Lieutenant General Jubal Early. Over the years, people have claimed to encounter ghost soldiers on the battlefield site and the cemetery, which is where the battlefield was, and it's said to be especially haunted. Today, let's take a look at the battle and claims of paranormal activity. In late February 1865, Union General Philip Sheridan was making his way through the Shenandoah Valley to cut off reinforcements and supplies that were aiding Confederate General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. Lee dispatched Lieutenant General Jubal Early to stop Sheridan and push him back north towards Winchester. Early had a much smaller force, and Sheridan was pretty confident in his campaign going into the battle, and it helped that he had a capable cavalry commander under him by the name of General George Armstrong Custer. Custer's division had encountered the Confederates near Mount Crawford, and he and Sheridan were eager to deal a fatal blow to Early's army. Their chance would come on March 2nd, 1865. On the morning of March 2nd, Custer and his men skirmished with men of the 36th Virginia Infantry near Fishersville, Virginia, just a few miles away from Waynesboro, and they were able to drive them back to the Confederate lines in Waynesboro. Early deployed his men in a single battle line with major artillery support, but his men were not the quality of troops the Shenandoah Army was used to having.
I want to stop this for a second here. Now, you see here where the Confederate lines are. The Confederate lines, if you follow Ohio Street on through behind the lines, and you'll see where it comes to a point. That point is actually where the red brick house where we're sitting at this moment is, and the lines are right on top of the cemetery that dates back to the 1700s. Now, off of Ohio Street here would have been Rose Hall, where Jubal Early would have been actually having breakfast when the battle took place. Now let's go on a little further.
Early made a fatal mistake when he assumed that the dense woods to the left of his line would be impenetrable for soldiers to get through, and this would come back to haunt him later. He also made another mistake when he only gave his army two routes of retreat, and both of them were through somewhat narrow passages over the South River. An artillery duel began shortly after Custer's men arrived at the town's outskirts at about 2 p.m. Custer sent a few brigades forward to try and find a weak point in the Confederate line. And when Custer learned of the gap between the Confederate left flank and the South River, recognizing that he could launch a flanking maneuver and it would also spare him major casualties and it would save him from a head-on attack, he ordered Colonel Alexander Cummings McWhorter Pennington Jr. to take 3 regiments from his 1st Brigade to attack the Confederate flank. At 3:30 p.m., the battle began with an artillery duel between the two sides. Custer then sent a flanking force under Pennington to make their way through the woods to flank the Confederate line. These men were armed with Spencer repeating rifles and were able to easily make their way through the dense brush. Just as the Confederates were reforming to face this new threat, Wells and Capehart's brigades rushed the Confederate center. In a matter of minutes, the Confederate army was in a complete rout. Early himself, with about 15 of his staff, escaped through Rockfish Gap. His entire army was either captured or scattered across the countryside, never again to form an effective fighting force. At the end of the fight, the Union suffered around 9 casualties, and the entire Confederate force was either killed, wounded, captured, or ran away. Fun fact, there were 2 medals of honor given to Union soldiers for heroics displayed during the quick battle that day. After the battle, many soldiers were buried in graveyards and cemeteries around town, and I even found a reference that people claim to see ghost soldiers in town as early as the 1890s, although this could be a story meant to scare kids around a campfire. The main hauntings take place at 2 locations. The first location is the cemetery where the woods by the Confederate left flank was. Many people visiting the cemetery claim to smell gunpowder and see ghost soldiers walking around the grounds as if they're looking for their fellow soldiers. The other haunted location is the Plum House in town. The house was there during the battle, and it also served as a field hospital and officers' quarters after the battle. The house is currently a museum, and people claim to see ghost soldiers in and around the house, and hear footsteps of nurses rushing to wounded men, as well as footsteps of officers pacing around the old meeting rooms.
So, this house, of course, was there as well. And I want to put in here my own part of this. Now, one thing I will dispute, and we don't know for sure, but looking at different history books and things, I don't think there was as many casualties as they implied. Now, this is from 7 years ago, up here in this space at the Red Brick House while we were renovating it. And this is what happened with us. And you judge for yourself if it's paranormal.
Civilization. You had the kids in the community that came here and got their education. The man who built this was a Revolutionary War soldier,
William
as
Brown.
well as War of 1812. And right behind here is a cemetery where there are Revolutionary War soldiers as well as Civil War soldiers. So to lose this would be a travesty. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of work, and you can see how much...
Now, you decide for yourself. The window was plywood over, and the sash was there. It happened right here. Now, I will say, I've been living here for 2 years, and I sleep rather well at night. If the place is haunted, they're happy that the place has been saved, and we're getting along nicely together. As always, I appreciate you guys. Leave a comment if you think the Red Brick House is haunted. I haven't smelled gunpowder. Have not seen any soldiers either. Have a nice one.